Community oh, wait a second, I gotta make sure we're recording, sorry. I forgot the thumbs up. All right, thumbs up. All right, good evening, everybody. This is Community Consolidated School District 46 Board of Education meeting for Wednesday, October 20th, 2021 at 6:30 p.m. here at Frederick School. I need a call to order and a roll call, please.
Weedman.
Here.
Braden.
Here.
LaCroix.
Here.
Miller.
Here.
And Nash.
Here.
Okay, that gives us a quorum. If I can ask everybody to please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, thank you. Before we get to the approval of the agenda, I'd like to make a quick amendment to the agenda to add an employee recognition before we do the public comments tonight. Is that okay with everybody? Okay, thank you. Then I need approval for the agenda with the amendment.
So moved.
Second.
Miller.
Aye.
Weedman.
Aye?
Braden.
Aye.
LaCroix.
Aye.
And Nash.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Glickman?
Well, I will be handing the honor of honoring one of our staff members over to Adam Halperin.
Thank you, Dr. Glickman. Board, everybody, welcome. Thank you. Tonight we are honoring Aggie Moreno. Throughout a school year, the operations and maintenance team play a very pivotal role in the day-to-day operations and functions of a district. Not many people get to see what really happens behind the scenes in the O&M department, and just like any job description, this one states the same: additional duties assigned by others. No 2 days are ever the same, and this day proved that to be true. On October 5th, Aggie was working the lunchroom duty as she does on a daily basis. During the 4th grade lunchtime, Aggie noticed a child choking, and without thinking twice, she performed abdominal thrust, aka Heimlich. Aggie's quick thinking and calmness aided in helping to dislodge the food the child was choking on. Aggie was hired in July, and since that time, her work and attitude has proven what an asset she is, not just to the O&M department nor Prairie View, but the whole CCSD team and family, and truly doesn't go unnoticed. Aggie, on behalf of the whole district, we would like to say thank you and acknowledge you for your fast and selfless actions. Thank you, Aggie.
Thank you very much. Okay, next is on the agenda is public comments. Do we have anybody signed up? Nobody signed up? All right, on to the next part is the presentation on the tax levy. I can only think of one person that needs to talk.
Oh. This is the proposed 2021 tentative property tax levy presentation of Community Consolidated School District 46. So here's our mission: empowering learners, creating equity, cultivating community. Here's our finance goal from our strategic plan. This evening we will be clarifying financial practices with transparency. And Board Policy 4:20, which determines board policy of 25 to 30%. So here is our timetable of the tax levy process that was presented to the board on September 22nd. This evening, there are 2 important steps in the process you as a board will be taking. The first is to see the levy extension and discuss it, and secondly, to approve the hearing and a public notice to be published to schedule the public hearing on November 17th. So here are our revenues taken from our recently approved budget. It's important to understand and remember the heavy reliance of local property taxes on our budget. And here are our expenditures, of which 75% of our budget goes towards people-related services. That's salaries and benefits of our staff and purchase services such as student transportation, food service, and night cleaning of our buildings. So before I go through the levy itself, I just want to go through some key terms and highlight them. First of all, we've got the tax levy itself, which is the amount of money that's requested from the property tax. We have the property tax extension limitation law, commonly referred to as the tax law or PTEL. We have the extension, which is the growth, limited by PTEL. And we've got the CPI, which is the inflationary indicator that measures the change over the last year. And finally, we've got EAV, which is equalized assessed valuation of all the taxable real estate in the district. The levy process itself, PTEL limits the amount of an increase to the lesser of 5% of the prior year plus the value of new property. So this is the PTEL limiting rate. The PTEL limiting rate is different from the property tax rate that you see each of you on your property tax bills. That's the levy divided by the equal assessed valuation. The final levy amount and related tax rate are determined by the Lake County's office, who applied the PTEL reductions after it's filed. So I'm not going to go through all the calculation here, but we have the 2020 equalized assessed valuation of $727 million. We have an increase of 3.5%, which is the estimate given to us from the Lake County Clerk's office, of $753 million. We know our prior year's extension because that's what we're receiving now, and we know the CPI from December of 2020, which was 1.4. So just a quick reminder, in addition to getting tax revenue from existing property, it's highly likely that we will have additional new property because that is an estimate. And that's an estimate at the time of the levy today. And that is $1 million, which was presented to you last month. So here's our CPI history. As you can see, 1.4 is below both the 5 and the 10-year average. And then we have our new property average, which is 2.16 million, so the estimate is below that too. So why do we levy to PTEL? Why do we levy to the fullest extent? Because we are a Tier 1 school district for evidence-based funding. And that's the state's determination based on 64% adequacy as per the 2020 Illinois report card. ESSA funding is non-recurring and designated for one-time pandemic relief. And finally, as we are all very, very aware, we have capital needs beyond our operating levy capacity. Our latest long-range facility plan is $36.7 million, presented last month. So here's the summary. The levy request represents a 2.5% increase over last year's extension, 1.99 if debt service is included. That difference accounts because debt service does not increase by CPI. We're asking for $38.5 million. We believe we will get $38.2. Thank you. I'd now like to invite questions from the board.
Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Wildman?
I have a question, Mr. Wheatman. Thank you, Mr. Waldman, for the presentation. I had a question with regards to the new property estimate, the $1 million. And so I wanted to know, what was that based on? Is this based on projects that were put on hold, kind of pre-pandemic, that's expected to resume, or are there other contributing factors that feed that projection?
That is based on what the Lake County Clerk's Office knows today is new property which rolls on for this tax levy year. So anything that's unknown, which will be received between now and the extension in March, accounts for that unknown factor. So that would be additional property that is sold, not additional property sold, it's additional property that is actually above and beyond the valuation that it is now. So it's not an existing property that's increased in valuation, it's literally new property. So with the pandemic, it's been difficult to assess that. So the levy request that I put forward accounts for up to $8 million of new property. So if we get 6 million, we've still levied to the maximum. If we get 9 million, I missed it off the mark.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
To make a couple of, so like just down the street here at Washington and 83 where they put that new Kitty Academy.
Yes,
That would be an example of one of the buildings that was built the year prior that would be coming onto the tax rolls this year, and that's part of the new construction that he's talking about. So
gotcha.
any new houses or buildings or stuff like that that get built, probably the extension of Harger lighting off of Ziegler Drive, those type of things, those are the new property that gets added on.
Gotcha. Good deal. Thank you both.
And that very idea is the reason there's those two numbers at the end of your presentation, what we're asking for and what we think we're going to get, because you're asking for a number based on a new property amount that's probably not going to materialize, right?
Correct, but I do not wish to get that wrong because it's super important, and I know we had the question about PTEL. If I do not capture all that additional revenue, I cannot go back. It is a one-time extension request, and I don't want to be the business manager has to come to you and said, I've left $300,000. Oops, sorry. No, I would like to be conservative in the request and make sure that we're doing the right thing for the future of the district.
Right, and if you lose it in 1 year, it just continues to compound that lost amount. Yeah.
Unfortunately, yes.
Thank you.
Anybody else have any questions for Chris? No? Okay. Thank you, sir. Next are any board reports?
I just wanted to let you know, if you haven't read the Pats recently, that Meadowview was named among the top 100 elementary schools in the state by U.S. News. So that's kind of exciting. And then also wanted to let you know that the Lake County Board is advocating for state legislature, a number of things, but there's a few that I thought were pertinent to us: to reduce single-use plastic items, carpet recycling, and also toxic asphalt sealants. So if and when Melinda comes, it might be interesting to hear her take on that. That's it.
Okay, I do have one. The board, over the last couple of weeks, worked to find a new board member to sit here with us. We interviewed 9 people over 2 nights. We had some very good candidates. It took us a while to determine who we wanted to sit with us. The first night we did 5 candidates, and the second night we did 4. And then after the 4th candidate went through, we deliberated for almost 2 hours to make sure that we had somebody that we felt was going to be a compliment to this board. She'll be sworn in tonight. She's sitting in the back of the room there. Jessica Albert was chosen. So we'll be swearing her in at the end of tonight's board meeting. So, thank you. Anybody else?
Just to add on to that, I think one of the things I wanted to reflect on from this process is that I was so impressed by the number of community members who raised their hand and said, I want to serve in this way. And so, 9 people is a lot of time, but to me, it just represents what this community is about. The fact that 9 people said, this is something I want to do, was really impressive. So thank you to every single person who interviewed, and we're very, very fortunate to have those folks in our district.
Okay, up to the superintendent.
Yes. Well, before we get started with other superintendent topics, I just wanted to welcome some audience members. Looks to me like we have some people who are a little bit younger than our usual audience. I'm going to make a guess from all of the note-taking that maybe you are students from a class. Is that correct? Yeah? Are you from Central or from North? Central? Welcome. We're really glad you're here. Were some of you or many of you students right here at Frederick? Yeah? Fantastic. Well, we're really pleased that you're here, and we hope that you'll enjoy the meeting. And I'm going to hand it over to Mr. Wildman again, who's going to give us a little bit of a meal service update specific to breakfast.
All right, my first update this evening is that Arbor is 100% fully staffed for all our buildings. As you may recall, we start the school year with several vacancies and staff from temporary agencies, so this is great news for all our students who get their food service they deserve. My second update is about the breakfast programs at Frederick, Grayslake Middle School, and Park. On November 1st, all students at Frederick and Grayslake Middle School will come to the cafeteria serving area to choose items from the serving line that they want for breakfast, just like they do for lunch, and eat in a designated area as decided by the school. The take-home breakfast option will no longer be available. 1 week later, on November 8th, all Park campus students will follow the transition plan to breakfast served in the building. All our other schools remain with the current food service, the take-home option for breakfast. However, on January 1st, all our buildings will transition to be breakfast served on site. We're really excited to announce this as another step towards normalcy in our school system operating in a global pandemic.
Thank you. And Mr. Halpern, some news about our cleaning service, our evening cleaning service.
Thank you once again. Just a little update. I'd like to share information regarding our new night cleaning service, GSF. The new contract for the night cleaning was due to start on October 1st. However, CCSD 46 and the cleaning service at the time mutually agreed to part ways on September 3rd. The newly approved cleaning service started almost a month early on 9/4. Over the next 3.5 weeks, GSF worked to employ the appropriate amount to staff to fulfill the contract. And by 10/1, GSF was fully staffed. Along with that, GSF has worked tirelessly over the weekends to clean and disinfect the schools to ensure a safe and clean learning environment. So far, we have been just thrilled by the service that we have received from them.
Thank you. And Mr. Woke.
Good evening, everybody. My announcement is not specifically about the district, but I wanted to let everybody know that in our attempt to find more program assistants and custodial staff, day custodial staff, we will be attending the Higher Lake County Job Fair, which will be next Wednesday afternoon. That is going to be at the Lincolnshire Marriott. There are going to be over 76 employers from around Lake County, so every corner of Lake County, and they will be representing over 1,500 jobs in the manufacturing, IT, professional services, healthcare, education, hospitality industries. Registration is open, so if you know somebody that is looking for a career change, go on to Higher Lake County and get registered to attend the fair. They will also have vaccinations on site, so if anybody's looking for vaccinations, they can receive that there.
Thank you. And of course, we're happy to be advertising for the entire community and especially for us. So we're really hoping to be able to get some more staff through that job fair. I have a couple of topics to talk about regarding COVID-19, and I'm going to start with Test to Stay. Board, you've heard us talk about this program in the past. This is the program by which students who are considered close contacts, meaning they've been exposed to somebody who has COVID, if they've been exposed at school, and if all of the mitigation strategies have been followed, we are able to give them tests, COVID tests, that will allow them to stay in school. You may remember that it took quite a while for us to be able to actually get access to the tests that we needed, but we finally were able to get access, and I'm very happy to tell you that it's been up and running since October 12th. And since October 12th, we've been able to keep about 50 students on site who otherwise would have been quarantining. Remember that a student has to be exposed in school in order to or related to one of our school activities in order to be eligible for test to stay. So students who might become exposed outside of the school setting, they still have to quarantine. But we are really pleased to have that program up and running. So we wanted to make you aware of that. And Chris, I'm glad you mentioned vaccination opportunities. We are working on another one. So we all know that we're waiting with bated breath for the official news of our youngsters, children 5 through 12, to be able to be, or 5 to 11, to be able to be vaccinated. We keep hearing that that will become possible in the beginning of November, but no one's signing on the dotted line yet. However, with the assumption that that's going to happen, we have been working on setting up vaccination clinics here in School District 46 so that families can very easily access the vaccine. We've been working with some folks over at the State of Illinois COVID vaccination outreach team, and we are looking at a vaccination event on November 13th. So with the assumption that they will become available the first week of November, we didn't want to choose the first Saturday in November. That just felt a little bit risky, not knowing what would really happen. So we went with the second Saturday in November, and we're planning to have a vaccine site right here at GMS and one over at Prairie View as well, so that families don't have to travel too far. The folks that I've been working with have been wonderful to work with. They tell us that they can bring us as many vaccines as we need. So likely early next week, we will be doing a survey with our families, not to have people sign up for slots. That would be the second round of things. It would really just be to get a gauge on how many people would actually use the service at school, because I've been kind of having this round-robin conversation with the folks at the State of Illinois COVID vaccination outreach team, where I'll ask them, how many vaccines can you give us? And they'll say, how many do you need? So now I have to tell them how many we need. So that's coming. Likely it will be a Pfizer vaccine, which means that we'll have them come back on December 4th. But there are a few more details to work out. It will be open to the community. We are really eager to be able to provide this service for our community. And finally, this has nothing to do with COVID at all, but in a little while, as a part of the consent agenda, the board will likely be approving the personnel report. And this week, there is an important event on the personnel report because Mr. Paul Lewis, our Assistant Superintendent for Teaching, Learning, and Assessment, has submitted his letter of retirement effective this June 30th, 2022. So we in the district are very sad about that because he has served the district so well over the 5+ years. It will be a full 6 before he leaves, yes, full 6 before he leaves. And we'll have a lot of time to say goodbye, but I don't want this moment to pass without just saying a brief thank you. Those of you who have been around for a long time know that Mr. Lewis did quite a lot to get our school district, all of our schools, moving in the same direction. Together with Ellen Carell, the former superintendent, Ellen and Paul worked together and actually coined the phrase in the district, one district, one direction. And one of the things that I kept hearing as I was coming in was how much Paul had done to align our schools, and I hope you feel very proud about that. Paul has also done wonderful work in the world of equity. So much of what we've been through as a school district over the last few years regarding equity and inclusion come under his heading. And I know that Paul is also very proud of the work that he's done with our instructional coaching team, and they will miss him deeply. One more thing before I stop talking about Paul for tonight is that, we have a letter of resignation, retirement from him, and typically nobody really sees these letters. People, when you write a letter of retirement or resignation, it goes in your personnel file. Not a lot of people see it, and people often will kind of write about the things that they did, but people don't see it. But what I wanted to point out is that Paul added something pretty special in his letter, because he wasn't just thinking about what he did in the past, he was also thinking about the future of District 46. So I'm just going to, sorry, Paul, read a paragraph. He wrote, "Indeed, the work in the district continues. I offer my full support to the next person to fill the role of Assistant Superintendent of Teaching, Learning, and Assessment. I also know that we have a number of big projects in process. I will continue to do my best on them." And indeed, in a little while, you'll hear Paul and me talk about some of the initiatives we have going on in our school district. We have complete and utter faith in you, Mr. Lewis, that you will continue to give it your all in our school district. We all know you, and we know that that's true. But thank you for even putting that in writing, because people don't typically do that, so thank you. And to that end, I will simply mention that Mr. Wilk and I are working on some kind of final touches on our timeline regarding hiring somebody new to lead the department. We will have a position posted sometime over the next week. We are looking at closing that position in terms of the posting a little bit prior to winter break, likely a week before winter break. All with the intent to be able to recommend a final candidate to the Board of Education at the first board meeting in February. Our goal really being to go out early to get the best, which is how it worked when we hired Mr. Wildman last year. We went out early, and that allowed us to hire Mr. Wildman. So that's our plans moving forward, and that's the end of the superintendent's report.
Okay, thank you. I'm sure we'll have to buy some sort of cake for Paul at the last meeting or something like that, you know. We got money for that, Chris? Okay. Congratulations, Paul. All right, so next would be the committee reports. The first is the Community Engagement Committee.
Other than Paul, we will miss you, and thank you for your service. No report.
That was quicker than I wanted. Didn't even get a drink in.
Let me take a little bit longer, I can make something up.
The next will be the Equity and Inclusion Committee. Nothing for that
I
either?
might be
Okay.
just as or faster than Mrs. Miller. No, just joking. I would like to thank Mr. Lewis for all his work that he's done in leading the Equity and Inclusion Committee here in the district. That was my introduction to the board service and community service engagements. And Mr. Lewis has always just been very thoughtful, very purposeful, and intentional about the work he has done and leads still, and challenges us to be great as a district, and I really appreciate that. So thank you so much, Mr. Lewis.
Okay. Next, I needed a motion to approve the consent agenda as well as the, with the personnel addendum that we got earlier this evening.
So moved.
Second.
Okay.
Braden,
Aye.
Nash,
Aye.
LaCroy,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Weedman.
Aye. All right, next will be, we are up to our action items. The first one is a motion to approve the electronic tool for superintendent evaluations.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, you want to re-explain what it is, because since we have more of an audience than normal?
Oh, sure. My pleasure. So every year, the board is required to evaluate the performance of the superintendent. And it can be quite a clunky process, because there are 7 people who need to come together in order to provide one evaluation. That was no insult meant, board. It's just hard to do with 7 people. So I was introduced to a tool that a number of my colleagues are using with great success, where the superintendent can put in the superintendent's goals and do some self-assessment and put in evidence of work in a wide variety of areas, and then the board, each board member is able to go in, look at those documents, look at the information, provide their own ratings, And then the tool just magically does all of the calculations and then creates one final evaluation process. So Mr. Weeman and I talked it over. He felt that it would be something very useful for this board, and so I brought forth that recommendation to you all.
Anybody have any questions? No? Okay, roll call.
Weedman,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Nash,
Aye.
Braden,
Aye.
and LaCroy.
Aye.
Okay. For some reason, my computer is messing up here. There we go. All right, next we have a motion to approve a memorandum of understanding for the COVID-19 related quarantine and COVID-19 related sick bank between the union, the two unions, and the school board.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions? No? Okay. Roll call.
LaCroy,
Aye.
Braden,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Weedman,
Aye.
Nash.
Aye.
All right, next action item is a motion to approve the resolution of the proposed 2021 tentative tax levy and schedule a public hearing on the 2021 tax levy and issue a notification to the public.
So moved.
I'll second.
Braden,
Aye.
LaCroy,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Nash,
Aye.
and Weedman.
Aye. Next is unfinished business. The first one is a continued discussion of the IASB resolutions that we had discussed last board meeting. We had 3 that we needed to revisit.
Thank you, Mr. Wheatman. All right, so to just set context, since we have new constituents in the audience, each year at the Illinois Association for School Boards Conference, or III, because there's 2 others that are in there, there is a delegate assembly where we vote on recommendations that have been brought forward by the Resolutions Committee of all the school boards in the state to either support the resolution that's being proposed or oppose it. So tonight is a continuation of where we left off last board meeting with 3 new resolutions that are on the table for consideration. The first is number 15, child safe gun storage. The details of this resolution can be found on page 15 of the Resolutions Committee report. Essentially, this recommendation is looking to expand the age requirement from age 14 to age 18 for safe gun storage to cover K through 12 schools and students, with the rationale being currently it's at 14, and with the rise of school shootings, expanding the age limit would provide coverage for all school-age children. The Resolution Committee recommends a do not adopt position with this resolution. Are there any questions, board? We're ready to vote.
Sure.
Mr. LaCroy?
Yeah, I know if we were going to be discussing, I don't have a question per se, but the board was split last time, 3 on each side of this. That's why we couldn't adopt a position last time. And I just wanted to opine again that I don't think this resolution is requiring anything of our district. It's not requiring us to provide any enforcement mechanism or anything like that. It's just basically adding another voice to the call for safe storage laws. So in that way, I will be, again, voting do adopt on this.
Do adopt? Okay. Ms.
Yeah,
Braden?
I'm do adopt as well, and I'd just echo what Jason shared. This is not a law. This is a position that we should have safe gun storage and protect our kids. So I'm a do.
Mr. Weedman?
This is where I disagree, but I'm a do not adopt as well as with the committee that recommended it. The main reason is, we always talk about government overreach and where people coming into your homes. Not that I disagree with everything should be stored safely, but I think us as a school board, kind of pushing it is pushing it.
Okay, thank you. Mrs. Miller?
So I also am going to vote with the committee and vote no, not to adopt. I agree it's government overreach. I appreciate the extra voice, but I'm going to land on the no.
Okay. And I am a yay. I did have a chance to confer with Mr. Mack earlier today, and he is a nay. So we still are tied. There's been no persuading anyone since the last
Well,
vote.
the
So
good thing
then,
is we just don't vote, right?
Yeah.
On that resolution. We can
Okay.
always choose that position, since we couldn't come up with
Do we
we
have,
couldn't come up.
could we revisit it? So the delegate assembly meeting is November 20th, Saturday, November 20th. Would we have an opportunity to revisit this once our new board member is sworn in for the next meeting?
Sure, she's tiebreaker.
Okay.
welcome
All
to
the
the board,
pressure will
Jess.
be on her.
No pressure.
All right. The next item was number 1, pre-service, teacher education and licensure and literacy. So we delayed this vote for more information in the hopes that Mr. Lewis would be able to get some insights from the teachers, given teacher shortage, and just understand from the teacher's perspective what the impact of this resolution could mean. The details of this resolution can be found on page 9 of the Resolutions Committee report. In summary, essentially, IASB is advocating ISB to require pre-service licenses of teachers in specific areas, early childhood education, special education being amongst many others, to complete at least one undergraduate level literacy education course dedicated to scientific methods of reading instruction.
So with apologies, I don't know that Mr. Lewis knew that he was to be speaking with teachers about this. Am I correct about that? Yeah, I don't think we understood that that was the request, and we just understood that the board wanted to speak about it again. So I don't know if you have anything that you wanted to add.
Again, if you were going to ask my opinion, the science of reading is really what this whole topic is about. Science of reading is a relatively new term in education. I think it's a good thing. I'm actually attending a full-day workshop tomorrow on the science of reading because it is the new buzzword. My concern about that is I think it is going to be a buzzword. And so I'm not sure if there's going to be the next new word coming soon, and so I'm not sure that it's necessary. I would trust our pre-service teachers to be adequately trained by the university design, and so I don't think it's necessary for us to promote a specific thing in the legislature.
Okay. Thank you for opining, Mr. Lewis. Colleagues, you should know the Resolutions Committee does recommend do adopt. Do we need to have further discussion? Okay. Mrs. Miller?
I'm going to go ahead with, I'm going to depend on Mr. Lewis's opinion. Agree to a vote no.
Okay.
No.
Mr. Weedman? Okay.
Same.
Mrs.
No.
Braden?
Same. I think it can start a seesaw effect like we were seeing with handwriting.
Mm-hmm. All right. Mr. LaCory?
Do not adopt.
I am a do not adopt, as is Dr. Mack, so we are unanimous to oppose this recommendation. All right, next and last is number 9, health and sex education curriculum. The details of this resolution can be found on page 13 of the Resolutions Committee report. In summary, this is about a language change. So currently, Senate Bill 0818 says a school district may, rather than shall, have control over the content and curriculum for health and sex education courses offered in their districts. So there is a concern that state legislature can change this language to shall at any time without local district input. So the recommendation here is do adopt to ensure that there's advocacy that it stays as may, so that state legislators can't come in and mandate a shall. Are there questions? Dialogue?
Just to be clear, is it, I don't know if anyone knows the answer to this, but is it accurate that they can just change it from can to shall without input? Is that, I mean, if it's legislation, I just have a hard time believing that that could happen. Maybe I'm way off.
Yeah, I would imagine that a hearing, a public hearing, or to some degree would need to happen.
Right. I mean, you'd have to amend the law, and that takes, right? Okay. I just feel like it's a little bit of,
It does require them to change it, but that doesn't mean they can't get enough people to change it.
well, sure, yeah, they could, but it says without input, and I just don't, to me, the legislative process would provide that input. You know what I mean? I feel like it's sort of overstating, like, they can't just go in one day and delete
Have you seen the state of Illinois?
can and put in must. So that's all I have to say, is I just don't know that that's,
Can I
what are
ask
we
a
even talking
question
about?
Yes.
about, so regardless of the may versus shall, if local districts have control of their curriculum in this area, is it or is it not true that they would, any curriculum that was promulgated by any district would have to be medically accurate, culturally appropriate, and trauma-informed, regardless of may or shall? Okay.
So I guess I don't quite understand what the resolution is about. I mean, not that Mrs. Nash didn't explain. It's not your fault. I'm just,
So I think the school district that's recommending bringing this resolution forward is concerned that at any time, by happenstance or some ways subverting the legislative process, will change the language, in which case they lose control over health and sex education in their district.
got it. Okay.
Is it
Mr.
okay
Lewis?
if I jump in?
Absolutely.
So in the board packet, I had provided some background information again. We're remembering that this is really a hot topic about sexual health, and there's already a buzz about the sexual health standards. We're reminded that the state has until next August to even share the list of standards, what they're going to be proposing. And then we have another full school year before August 1st, 2023, before we have to implement. So it's really hard to discuss each of the standards when we only have, as Mr. LaCroix said, a general framework. I did pull up the actual law, and so I still have been difficult finding the may and the shall, because I don't see it in the parts that I pulled out. In the courses of the study, it repeals the sex education, family life, and instruction on diseases provisions. Instead, beginning no later than July 1st, 2023 requires a school district, including a charter school, to provide comprehensive personal health and safety education in kindergarten through the 5th grade and comprehensive sexual health education in the 6th through 12th grades for all public schools, sets forth the criteria that all classes that teach comprehensive personal health and safety and comprehensive sexual health education must Satisfy. Contains, among other provisions, provisions concerning guest lecturers or resource persons' participation, the review of instructional materials, learning standards, resource materials, and reporting. Requires a school district, including a charter school, to provide age and developmentally appropriate consent education in 3rd through 12th grades, and sets forth what the instruction and materials must include. So that just tells me that's the framework, the guidelines of what the state has been charged to do to create those standards and what they're going to look like when we see them after August 1st, 2022. So in my opinion, this is a requirement. And then I also shared in the board memo that we already have a board policy that allows parents to object and to inspect materials and to be aware. In this case, we have always and will continue to inform parents ahead of time that that instruction is going to be happening and when it's going to be happening, and if they would like to review or to see any of the materials that we'll be doing. So in my opinion, I think our regular practices that we do for all instructional areas is very appropriate and fits the need of this information.
Thank you, and I wanted to add in one more piece, just kind of as a little sum up. As I read this, this resolution, to me, what they're saying is, we, this school district, have our own sexual health curriculum, and we don't want to change it. In fact, they come out and say, we don't want to change it, and so we are asking for the guarantee that we will not have to change it. That's really what this is about. And the may and the shall is kind of wrapped into that, but the point is, they don't want to have to follow new standards that will be brought by the state of Illinois.
Well, as I understand it, they'll have to follow the standards, but they won't have to follow any exact curriculum, a prescribed curriculum, right? The standards will still apply, and they're just worried about the state coming and saying, here's the curriculum you will use.
I don't interpret it that way. I think that they are looking for a way to not have to follow those standards. Paul, you agree? Yeah. I think they're using the term curriculum as a heading for standards. And they're looking for the ability to just continue doing what they're doing.
Even if it doesn't follow the new guidelines. Because to Paul's point, we don't even really know what the guidelines are.
Correct.
We just know descriptively.
And so essentially, they're looking to supersede the legislation that's already on the books.
Correct.
The ability to, anyway.
And I can't think of any other curriculum area, Mr. LaCroix, that the state tells us what resource we have to use.
Yeah.
That's usually left to us to even find them or to even consider them. And so that has not been a past practice in other subject areas, that the state actually says you must use that. There are a few mandates that say you have to show this Congressional Medal of Honor video, but those are a little bit different than standards in the curriculum sections.
So is it accurate to say that they are trying to create this resolution to respond or react to a hypothetical situation also that, okay.
Right, so right now, they feel like they have the latitude to do what they want and need to do, but they want to implement this as a safeguard so that they always have that latitude, as opposed to being told or given a directive as to what they would have to do.
Okay, so maybe I'm not understanding, because earlier I thought it was established that regardless of whether this resolution results in the change in that bill, so if this were adopted and was successful, then a district could put forth a curriculum that did not meet the standards of medically accurate, trauma-informed. That's what we're saying? Okay.
Yes,
my
and I think
understanding.
we also know that, our school district has been very consistent in following the guidelines that we receive from the state of Illinois, the State Board of Education. We are, consistent about doing that under the heading of curriculum. We're consistent about doing that under the heading of COVID mitigations, all of those things. We default to what we are told by the state of Illinois we need to do, but that is not the case in all school districts.
Board, are we ready to take a vote, or do we need more additional conversation? We're good? Okay. Ms. Braden?
I'm a do not adopt on this.
Okay. Mr. Weedman?
I'm a do not.
Ms. Miller?
I'm a do not.
Mr. LaCroy?
Do not adopt.
I'm a do not adopt, as well as Mr. Mack, so the board is unanimous to oppose health and sex education curriculum changes brought forward by the resolution committee. Okay? That concludes our review of the 2021 resolution committee report. Do we have any closeout questions before I yield the floor?
Just thank you for all the close work you put into it. Really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Yeah, we'll make sure that our new board member gets the information so that she can review it, and then we can bring the last one back in November.
Well done.
Okay. As evident by the people getting up and walking to the front, I guess they're up next. It is the district goals update, communication and teaching learning assessment goals. It's the short legs.
Good evening. Board, as you are well aware, can you hear me okay? These are new mics, yeah? Okay. As you're well aware, last spring, we convened a committee, a group of over 50 people, to come together to talk about the needs of our school district. And out of those conversations, excuse me, our new strategic plan was born. And specifically, what we're talking about tonight is our strategic plan goals, or our new district goals. Our administrative team has been hard at work in building those goals out so that we have a plan, right? So that we know what we're doing next. Tonight, Mr. Lewis and I are going to talk about the goals under the headings of communication and teaching, learning, and assessment. We're going to center just on those goals. And when you come back in 2 weeks, you're going to hear about goals in the areas of finance and facilities and technology. So what you have in front of you, by the way, is what we call a thinking map. You've heard about those before. Mr. Lewis, who is the star of the show tonight, brought them to our school district, and we decided to use thinking maps as a way to convey our thoughts moving forward on our goals. So we're calling them goal maps. And I'm going to be talking about the communication goal. And what you'll see is that we've identified the steps and the plans for this school year. That's in purple, in the 21-22 school year. And actually, there it's purple. In front of me, it's blue, but whatever, purple or blue. Then in kind of a pink color, we have what we're planning to do next school year. And then in green, we have 23-24 school year and beyond, because our strategic plan was really written as a 5-year plan. You're going to notice that these plans are not yet intricate, and there are a lot of places where you're going to see us say, well, and then we're going to be making more steps. Because it's truly not possible to build out 5 years worth of plans for some of these topics because of the information that has to be gathered along the way. So under communication, one of our topic areas is unified and accessible communication. And so one area is a new website design, and you will see that we plan that by fall of 2022, the new website with added features will be launched. You know that we are already hard at work on that. Last board meeting, you approved the purchase of the new website tool and the company that we're working with. Of course, our current website requires all of the behind-the-scenes work to be done by one person. That won't be appropriate at all anymore moving forward, and so another one of our action steps for this year is to put a plan in place for shared responsibility of content updates. So that will all happen this school year by the fall of 2022. And then also by January of 2023, the dashboard with key metrics will be launched, possibly sooner, but we have benchmarked January of 23. Moving on to our new logo, that's something that we are getting moving on very quickly so that by the upcoming January 2022, our new logo will be created with community input. We were discussing our plans for that just today. And then following that, we will start using it in all of our materials. Communication in multiple languages is a very important topic to us. You've heard us talk about it a lot. We already moved through the action step of hiring another Spanish translator that's used throughout the district. She's very hardworking. We're keeping her very busy. And we've already clarified the translation expectations for school communications and instructional purposes. So all of our administrators, our school offices know what needs to be translated. Moving forward, next year, we will review and plan for translation in other languages as needed. And another big area for us this year is the consistent usage of platforms. So by this summer, the intent is to audit our community regarding their social media and other communication preferences and staff usage, and then build future action steps. So that's an example of, that's all it says there. We don't know what those action steps are going to be because we don't know what the audit's going to tell us. So rather than putting forth some false things that we might do, we're just halting there. We'll see what comes next. The other communication topic has to do with community connections. This group that met during strategic planning talked a lot about the importance of working with other entities in our community so that we are sharing resources with other entities in our community and also sharing information. We didn't, however, clarify what that would really mean. There frankly wasn't time for that, and maybe not even the right people around the room, around the table to do that. And certainly it doesn't make sense for me to do that sitting by myself in my office, right? We're talking about community, we have to have community there. So the only action step this year for that is for me to meet with the Community Engagement Committee several times this year to talk about and build action steps, bringing us into action steps for next year. So that's the work on our communication goal, and I'm going to hand it over to Mr. Lewis.
So I'm continuing in the same format that I'm going to read the first goal. You'll notice that under curriculum we had two different goals. I've just named them Curriculum 1 and Curriculum 2. But the first one I'm talking about tonight is review and update teaching, learning, and assessment practices and materials through an equity lens to create culturally responsive learning environments. So on our map today, we have that broken up into 4 big categories. When we decompose those, that expectation, that goal, 4 big areas came out. And so that first area is equity audit. You've heard us talk about at the board table that our equity audit has already begun. So we've engaged with an outside corporate company to help us do a complete review of all of our practices and procedures and everything that goes on in the school regarding equity. So we've done some action steps already that you see highlighted in purple. The first one is we've created our DELT. Our DELT is our District Equity Leadership Team. We've had a fabulous meeting where we brought staff from all the different buildings together. We created the questions that we're going to want to use during our focus groups, which I'll talk about in a minute. We identified all the data that will be collected over the next few months, and we brought together this team so that we have a cohesive idea of what's happening. Again, the second topic was about the focus groups. We actually have started the process of sending out invitations to our faculty, to our staff members. We're in process of accepting those invitations for identified focus groups. We soon will be sending out invitations for our community members, and we also have identified dates for our students in grades 4 through 8 to participate in our focus groups. Again, based on the question that the DELT created, with the consultants so that we can get the data that we're hoping for, the answers to the questions that we're looking for. And then the big step that will take a bulk of the school year will be collecting the data. So it's all about attendance data or achievement data or about hiring data. There's a very long list of all the data sources we need to collect, disaggregated as much as possible. So that will be a data collection work that we're doing right this school year. The goal is for us to get a report back about the equity audit, hopefully by the end of this school year or over the summer. And so next year, our plan is to continue with the consultant and to create a EAP, and that stands for an Equity Action Plan. So it'll be specific steps to address some of the issues that we believe are the most important that the outside agency has provided to us as suggested topics. And then for the 23-24 school year, we'd like to implement those action plans, take steps to make it happen. At this moment, I don't know what that action plan is going to say, so it's hard to create too many action steps, except that we're going to take action with board's approval and consent about those things. The other big topic from the goal is understanding cultural responsiveness. So one of the things that we're realizing is that we have some professional learning that we need to do as an administrative team to learn more about what it means to be culturally responsive. So that's one of the first things we're wanting to do this year. And as we, as the administrative team, and likely maybe the instructional coach team and such, then we'll want to present professional development for our staff next school year. So that will be a focus of our professional development in buildings and district events. And then while we're doing that, we also want to make awareness, share all of that information with our community, so that our community knows what we've been learning and what we're focusing on in regards to cultural responsiveness. And then the following year, we hope that our environments, our school settings, can more closely match a culturally responsive environment. Another big one is the curriculum review. You've heard us talk about the need for some new literacy materials. There's a need for some new social science materials over time. We also have a need for an expiring science contract. So part of the curriculum review as part of this goal, we're going to continue with our system here in the school for planning and design teams, PDTs. We're in the process of forming them, getting representative staff from all the buildings, all the different grade levels, who are going to be able to help us identify where we need to make some changes. Our goal by the end of this school year is to identify, after we review multiple resources for science and for literacy, for an appropriate purchase with board approval. Following next year, in 22-23, we also will be working on social science. I think I've mentioned here at the board meetings in the past that the state of Illinois is in current revisions of our social science standards, and I think the new revisions also fit into cultural responsiveness. And so it will be the time for us to work on the new standards and to look at resources and such, just as we were doing for literacy and for science. And then, just earlier, we talked about the new health standards. And so our new health standards have a component of equity and culturally responsiveness to them as well. So we'll be working, once those new standards come out by August 1st, 2022, we'll be working on that the next school year. And then, as always, curriculum is up for continuous improvement. So future years we'll be looking and then evaluating and identifying still any gaps that we have. The last one is about assessment. And in the goal it talked about that we wanted to look at our assessment practices. So really the big concept in these is that we want to check our assessments to see if they are culturally responsive. Are we having bias that we're not even fully aware of in our assessment questions? Are there ways that we can make it more accessible for our students, no matter of the language they speak or their background? So we really want to dive into the whole concept of looking at our assessments through a cultural and equity lens. And then, as part of our equity audit, we are realizing that much of our school data about assessments we don't have a process yet to well-define our subgroups and to be able to disaggregate. Once we review those assessments, we would like to put in new practices for disaggregating, to analyze those. We do have a tool called ION that we would like to be using more to be able to help us gather data to support equity. And then we want to continue to evaluate and to assess how we're doing all of our assessments throughout the school district. If I'm moving on to curriculum number 2, this goal says to investigate options for new or revised course offerings with emphasis on world language, dual language, and Encore opportunities. We again had to unpack a little bit, and just if you see the map that's in front of you, you may notice that there isn't anything in purple on this screen like the other ones did. And part of that is we had to look strategically about capacity. How much can our teachers and our staff do, and are there things that we need to get in place before attacking this goal? So that first one is really looking at explore possible revisions to the structure of the day. If we're thinking about adding a whole new course, we have to figure out how we can find the minutes to make that happen. Could that mean an elimination of something else? Could it mean a restructuring of other things? Could it mean adding minutes to the student school day? So we have a lot of work to do. So the things involved in that is we have a lot of study, we have a lot of review, we have a lot of discussions with the finance committee over time that we need to look at. We also have to think about all of the staffing considerations, because for us right now we have openings for bilingual and EL teachers. For us to consider adding a slew of world language teachers, for example, that may be challenging to fill positions, as we heard that my colleague, Mr. Welk, is doing everything he can to find more applicants. The other one is explore considerations for world language. We know that that's a desire to have returned to the school district. That was eliminated a number of school years ago because of budgetary issues. But it's time to have that conversation again based on the strategic goal. We would like to work very collaboratively with District 127, because if we make instructional changes in a world language, it's going to greatly impact their staffing and their course design for world languages as well. Again, part of it is to determine what language or languages, if it's going to be more than one. So that's a pretty hefty conversation we need to do. And again, it all comes back down to feasibility. If we can design a plan, but we don't have minutes in the day to do it, we're not going to be able to be successful. The next one is about explore the possibilities of dual language. I'm going to just stop and give a little bit of a definition. This year we're very proud that our one-way dual language program is moving up all the way to 7th grade. Next year it'll roll up into 8th grade. And that's a one-way. That means all the students are heritage Spanish speakers, and that's how we provide the instruction. Dual language means that we have typically 50% of heritage English speakers and 50% heritage Spanish speakers in the same classroom together, learning together, growing together, seeing each other as learning buddies through the whole process. And with the goal of having both kinds of students biliterate. So both students would end a dual language program being fluent in English and Spanish for speaking, reading, writing, listening, all of those things. That's a great asset that also impacts world language choice then later, so they're definitely connected in that. And the goal for our students in one-way dual is to get the seal of biliteracy. We would like to see even more kids be on that track to have a seal of biliteracy, even if they didn't start speaking Spanish early. So to make all that happen, it's a lot of feasibility, it's a lot of conversation, it's a lot of discussion, it's a whole bunch of work on making sure that we have the right curriculum materials for every subject, which right now we only have some subjects available because that's how our program is designed. So a lot of work in dual language. To me, that's a really exciting thing for the school district. I know that we have a number of parents who have asked us can I get my kid in that class? Please, 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 we would love our children to be biliterate, and which we agree is a positive thing. And then the other thing is we want to explore future Encore opportunities. Encore is the term here used in the district for all the specials rotations. So do we have the right ones? Do we have the right courses? We don't have consistency at the moment between buildings, so we want to make sure that we're going to be working on consistency between all of the buildings. So this will include more study, possible site visits, research, looking at staffing, doing cost analysis, all of those kind of things again, because it's not just, okay, we're going to offer a new course, it's what are the ramifications of offering that course, what are the staffing issues, and then determine feasibility and next steps. So you can see this goal has a bigger, broader spectrum, that it has lots of requirements and lots of things for the district to be considering over time. Whew. I'm continuing, though, to let you know that as Dr. Glickman shared, she and I just shared the first 3 out of the 6 goals, and then on November 3rd, our colleagues will be doing a similar presentation in those 3 areas, again, technology, finance, and facilities. And we're ready for questions, I think, unless you had some parting words. So we're ready for questions.
I have no questions, but I want to thank you for using the thinking maps. It is fantastic to see it all laid out in a map, to see the connections and how they overlap and support one another, so thank you for that. And I just want to tell you some of the things that I'm excited about, and again, not a question, but just I love the way that we are moving in a direction that increases the ways we engage with our stakeholders and the reasons for which we engage with them. It's not just an information push out, so thank you. We're also bringing information in, thank you. I love the combination of focus groups and the core stakeholder team from the strategy sessions that we've had. I'm also really looking forward to seeing the results of the Encore and language exploration, to see what that means and what we can offer. And then also wondering if if the exploration includes anything about ethics of the stories that we tell, or the art we create, or the music that we sing. So not asking for answers to that, just that's what my brain's pinging, and I loved seeing the thinking maps. So thank you.
Kristen? Jason, do you have anything? Mika? No? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next unfinished business is a continued discussion of the Student-Led Sustainability Committee.
I think Chris is pulling up the PowerPoint. Is that right, Chris? Thank you. Nice.
I got it up, I can just send it to you. I believe that should be going to you. Either I sent it to the wrong Chris, which is completely possible. That was successful, nice. We did something like that.
Okay, so I'll try to go quickly through the stuff you've already seen, but just as a review, This is the Youth Sustainability Advisory Committee for middle school and high school students. And the first few slides you've already seen, but I made a few changes and wanted to make sure I noted those. So the first one is just the heading, that the time is 16 weeks from January to May, so there's a distinct start and stop to this advisory committee. Again, my process was thinking about what do we have currently and what can we do with that and what do we need. And what we're asking for is access to the utility bills. It would be 12 consecutive months of utility bills for one building, and then the ability to distribute surveys to building occupants, again, for one building. That we're estimating after conversations with two people who work with multiple schools and then with our green professional mentor, who I had not talked with prior to the last meeting, and they all agree that we can do this with 2 to 3 hours of Mr. Halperin's time. It does not include Mr. Wolk's time if we have to do background checks. So I think that's important to note. So again, we'd invite middle and high school students to serve. I know we had some conversation about that. We can come back to that if we need to, but right now that's what we're asking. We would ask them to inventory the resources, assess our carbon footprint, and then share with us ways that they could help us continue the work that we're already doing in our capital improvement plan with the long-range facilities plan. So again, the emphasis is helping the students identify what they can do. We would not be asking them to come and tell us what we should be doing, because we're already doing quite a bit. So that's what they would be doing. At the end, we would use ARC, which is the technology platform, and that would help us assess 1 or possibly 2, depending on whether we want utility bills or a survey, these 5 categories of energy, waste, water, transportation, and human experience. And then the USGBC, which is a federally funded organization, they have created quite a suite of tools that we could use that would be at our disposal. So that should be somewhat of a review, and I wanted to share the decision-making principles that I have relied on to bring this to you, because as a former teacher, I'm sensitive to someone coming in and telling me what to teach, and that is not my intent. I don't think we should do that. And I want to be very clear that if our administrative team is not supportive of this, I don't think we should move forward. So, but these are the decision-making principles that I think were salient to this. The first is, what's the impact on resources, and the tangible and intangible resources listed there. The second is, what's the impact on all of the stakeholders who are involved, and then the impact on the built and natural environment. And I'm going to actually include also the social environment. I think we might want to think about that too. So for those of us who are English teachers or former English teachers, this is the condition of the setting that we're in, not just the physical space. So staying with the what and digging down a little bit deeper, what we're looking at is a few different options. We can do this completely on our own, and that will cost some time. And we can do this with a scholarship or without a scholarship. So those are the options that we're thinking about right now. Depending on which option we choose, we are looking to ask our local volunteers to contribute 48 to 50 hours over the 16 weeks. Probably at a minimum, I'm guessing that'll be a little bit more. We're also asking our mentor. She has agreed to contribute 16 hours, so 1 hour a week at a minimum. And she says probably more, but she's looking at getting a new job, so she doesn't want to overcommit. And then we're looking at 3, and I put 3 because that's what I know we might need from Mr. Halperin. I don't know what the plus is for background checks. Hoping we can get some clarity on that. Depending again on the option, it'll be free. And this is different from last time, $250 or $1,000. However, we have donors that are willing to make up that cost. So the net cost would probably be free to us. I don't know how to quantify the mental energy, the oversight that it takes for a program like this, but I think it's important to note that public educators have a lot that's put on them, and this is something that matters, even if we don't have a way to quantify it at this point. Endorsements are, if we choose to adopt this and use these tools, then I think that's a tacit acknowledgement that we trust those tools, and that's also important to think about. And then finally, the tangibles, as I've said before, the 12 months of utility bills and the building occupant surveys. Both of those take time. So in terms of stakeholders, we're looking at students, and I'm going to focus on what I think they will gain from this. I think high school and middle school students are at an age where they're ready to take their place in society, and the high school students especially will be voters in the next election. So it's an opportunity for them to participate in governance. It's also an opportunity for them to learn systems thinking, that we understand 21st century skills, that is one of them and it will be required. Our volunteers also will have increased capacity, both our local volunteers and our regional volunteers, and then our administration and staff. This goes to more of the costs, so time, energy, funds, and skills we've already identified. If there are values, that would be good to know from our administration if they see value, and if you see a value in this too. And then our impact on the environment. We will generate awareness through benchmark data, because that's what the ARC is going to give us. And that can help us as we tell our narrative about the IAQ assessment, the indoor air quality assessment, the condition of our buildings, the reputation of our community as a sustainable community, and then define this governance space or partnerships. And this is one of the things that's different. And I'm going to have to draw with my hands in the air at this point. But what I'm thinking is that if we ask for utility bills, not from all 7 buildings, like I had thought about last time, but maybe just from one, that can be one piece of information. And then the students can go to the library board and they can ask the library to have another set of information, a different set from what we ask of our schools. So maybe the kids go and ask for a transportation survey from us, but they go and ask for utility bills from the library and from the village, and then from fire or one of the other taxing bodies. And at this point, I've approached a few people and there's interest in that. So that, I'm hoping, would decrease the burden on our staff and spread it out. And those spaces, if you imagine those as dots on a page and you connect them, that space in the middle is what I'm referring to when I talk about a governance space and a community space. So once the students are done, they would have a score that might give us just a benchmark information about what our community is doing in terms of sustainability. And I think that would be a win in a few different ways. So I want to come back to this map, which the CEC has shared with you prior to now, and talk about what we're not trying to do, and what we really are committed to not doing. So we've got the green side of this map. Thank you, Chris. We've got the green side of this map, which is the operations side. This is the superintendent and everyone who is on staff for her. I feel strongly that we should not be invading that space. It doesn't work, it's not effective for a whole bunch of reasons. So I want to reiterate that. I am talking about the blue side, and that is the community space. And in particular, there's that really thin little line in between the superintendent and the Board of Education. And so for those of you who are not familiar with some metaphors that we use, we talk a lot about the green space as being the dance floor, and we agree to stay off of it, pretty much as a board. The other side, the blue side, we refer to as a balcony. So the space in between, to me, is kind of the stairwell in between. And it's the place where we come together and we partner with one another as opposed to a top-down. We say, hey, this looks like a good idea. What impact will it have? And that's what the conversation I'm hoping we're having right now. But again, the snowball effect is important, to borrow one of my colleagues' phrases. It's important to make sure that doesn't happen, because sometimes people come to boards or come to administration and say, we've got this great thing that we want to do, and then we want you to incorporate it into your classroom, and it ends up taking away from the strategic plan's goals and the past work. That's not what I'm doing, and I'm pretty committed to holding a line there. So how would we do that? I think the best way is just preemptively talking with the volunteers and with the mentor to say, is this feasible to do it in 2 to 3 hours? And are you committed to doing it? And what are the ups and downs of that? And can we hold that line? I have commitment from all the volunteers and from the mentor that we will hold that line. We won't come back and ask you for more. I thought it was interesting, Waleska is the green professional who is newly minted green professional. She just graduated with her master's, and she's from Brazil. And I asked her, how are you going to do this? What do you imagine this would be like? And she looked at me like I was nuts, and she said, it's just like what we do in Brazil. We look at what we have, and we do with what we have. We don't push or expect more. We just work with the things we already have. So I thought that was a good indicator that we would not be asking for more than we had. I think another way that we can make sure that we don't have a snowball effect is to be very clear about what we want as a board. I would suggest that we are asking our students to engage as citizens, to participate in productive engagement where they come to us and say, what are you already doing and how can we help? And then identify ways that they can help. And I think also it would help our board as we strive to share the narrative about how our district leverages all the resources we can. We don't waste anything, and that includes and I don't think I'm exaggerating, the brilliance of our youngsters, of our youth. So that's the snowball effect. The next question, I think, next slide, please, Chris, is the strategic plan. So the next few slides are about our mission, vision, values, and goals. I think the mission is furthered through this program because it empowers learners and it cultivates community in the ways that I've bulleted. And as I've said, I'm open to equity. I just need the eyes and ears of our equity committee before I can speak more to that. So I'll let you read that. But I think it's directly connected to empowering learners and cultivating community. The next slide is the vision of our district. And the vision of our district is to provide opportunities that expand learning beyond our walls so that all learners can grow locally, connect globally, and excel universally. So I think the Beyond Our Walls learning is extended with this project. I think we can highlight the facilities contribution and individual behaviors contribution to climate resilience, which is coming and which our youth are going to have to contend with. And I think has the potential to connect across our community, regionally, and with a green professional. So I think it's consistent with our vision. Maybe even most importantly, I think it extends and enhances our values. I think this project will empower learners to think critically, engage in systems thinking. I think learners will collaborate proactively across all kinds of boundaries as they design their response to climate change. And I think it involves our community in a shared experience that empowers multiple stakeholders to act. And then our goals. One of the things we talked about is really not wanting to take staff or students away from goals, distract them from the ambitious goals that we've set. And I don't think it does. In particular, I think this program extends our facilities and technology plans, and I would even add communication now after I've heard from Dr. Glickman and Dr. Lewis about our curricular goals and other big ideas. So let's stay with facilities. First, I think it will expand the IAQ assessments with other benchmark metrics that I think will be valuable, but again, I would be interested to hear if that will be valuable or not. I think it's also a creative use of land and buildings for learning experiences. As far as technology goes, it clarifies the master facilities plan with additional stakeholders that were not involved with strategic planning. And it uses tech in a way that's meaningful, innovative, and engaging. And all that language is directly from our goals. The third is, I would say, is communication. And that's because one of the specific action plans, I'm not sure if that's the word or if that's the phrase you would use, but it discusses using student involvement in communication goals. So I think it's consistent with those goals too. So to wrap up, I want to be clear about what the goals are and are not, and also what parameters we're looking at. The first is we're going to prevent the snowball effect. We're not going to allow this to bleed into more than 2 to 3 hours of of Adam's time plus whatever it takes to do background checks and whatever else you identify. I think it's well aligned with the mission, the vision, the values and goals of our strategic plan. And then I also think it benefits our community and our board as we strive to tell a narrative, especially as we are looking at the larger concerns for the next 2 years. So we're talking 16 weeks from January to May. It ends at May, it doesn't bleed into the next year. We're looking at collecting data from utilities, 12 months of consecutive utilities bills, and/or one survey, depending on which of the 5 categories we address. They're going to use the ARC platform, report their findings to our and other civic boards or businesses, and finally, that we will contribute 2 to 3 hours of total staff time outside of the board meeting, plus whatever it takes for background checks and whatever else. So this is what I'm asking, and I want to reiterate something that I've said to a few of you in private. My hope is to put this in the middle and for us to have a pretty good discussion about it, because I don't take lightly asking even for 2 to 3 hours. I think public educators have been asked over the last several decades to absorb a lot more than just instruction in way of food and nutrition, before and after school care, transportation, and now contact tracing with COVID. So I would hope that we would take it, we would never ask for time lightly from our staff. And if we decide that we want to move forward and staff doesn't, then we don't. And if we are all in agreement and think this is valuable, that would be my intent, that we would move forward. So I just want to be clear about what my intention is and recognize what we're asking.
Anybody have any comments?
Mr. Wheaton? Thank you, Mrs. Miller, for putting together a very robust and detailed plan and walking us through it and connecting the dots. I appreciate that. I know you had some cost estimates referenced, and it was cost dependent on scholarship and such, and I didn't know if part of that would go to cover ARC, or is ARC funded? Is a free resource available for an initiative like this, or would it be at cost?
So I think you're asking if there would be an additional cost for ARC?
Mm-hmm.
No, ARC is included in all of the options.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. And then my next question is, you said that perhaps instead of taking on 7 big initiatives, that perhaps we could spread out over other stakeholders in the community. You named the library, the village, fire department and such. Do we know if there are already partnership programs in place like this with any of the other constituents that potentially we could tap into, or as opposed to needing to kind of create something?
So I think that's a great question. I can tell you what I do know is that there's, in informal conversations, I've not approached the boards because we haven't approved this, but in informal conversations, I did not hear anything about other programs that do this kind of thing. And I'm glad you brought that up, because I think it's appropriate for us to initiate that, because we are a radically transparent board, and this governance space that I talked about, for a whole bunch of reasons, I think my impression is that it's pretty informal, and it might be good to make it formal and make it a little more conspicuous, so that residents in our communities can see the relationships between the boards, and that those partnerships become more formal and more articulate about what we're trying to do for our community.
Okay,
But to answer your question, not that I'm aware of.
okay. All right, thank you.
Can I jump in, because I really meant to ask Dr. Glickman to speak into this before, and it might be easier to know what additional costs, what additional time, what value this might provide for our district.
I'm really struggling with these wonderful new mics. Thank you so much, Christy. Thank you, Mrs. Miller. Well, first of all, just like Mrs. Nash commented, I'm very grateful for the level of detail that you provided tonight, and particularly the crosswalk that you provided for us between this initiative and the strategic plan. And I will tell you that the connection between the initiative and the strategic plan is much clearer to me tonight. So thank you so much for that. And I want for us very much want for us not to get too hung up on individual staff responsibility. So you've asked about volunteers. I know we've had a lot of conversation about volunteers and background checks. You know, I haven't asked Mr. Wilk exactly how long it would take, but doing background checks for volunteers certainly should not be a barrier to us getting a project like this off the ground. You know, doing just that one thing, that wouldn't make any sense at all. I brought up background checks at our last meeting because at one point during that conversation, what I'm recalling is that you had mentioned that there really wouldn't be much, you know, work for staff, and I was simply wanting to illustrate there are things that staff would have to do. So background checks is something staff would have to do. We talked a little bit about the need for Spanish translation, perhaps surveys, or getting the students involved. We might need to tap into our Spanish translators. There's the Adams time, as we talked about. I'm not sure I've heard yet where the meetings would be held, but if they're on school grounds, there's the conversation about, the custodial staff. None of those things in and of themselves should be a barrier to this project. I just wanted to be clear that there are responsibilities that staff would have to take. And just as I was kind of expressing earlier when I was talking about working with the Illinois State to get our getting these vaccines started, I have now had to work with 3 different people. It's taken a ridiculous amount of time just to get a little piece going, because that's what happens sometimes, right? Things get in the way. So I think it's reasonable to assume that without any intent, some staff time would grow. Again, I don't think that should be a barrier to moving forward with this project, just something for us to be aware of. Christy, you asked, and I think maybe you asked this to me via email about the benefits. And I think you've identified many of the benefits. It's now that I have a clearer vision that a lot of it would be for the students to identify their own ability to reduce carbon footprint. That helps, to understand that. I'm unclear yet how many students would be involved, and I know I did raise at our last meeting, I think it was, the wonder if there would be parents who would be less willing to have their students involved if they're connected with high school students, just because of the difference in maturity levels. I could be way off base there, and it could be that there'd be plenty of parents who would approve that. I'm just not sure. I think when you're talking about what is the benefit for children, part of the question is how many children, right? And how many children are going to benefit from this kind of a project, because I'm not sure I've heard yet how many would be involved. So those are a few of my thoughts to share at this time.
Yeah, so thank you for that. Want to clarify clarify 2 things and address the other. The first is the surveys are already created and translated, so that would not be necessary. And I forgot to say in my board report, we have another translator on the CEC who's also joining the board, but she's already done that for the food drive, so great. Side point. Anyway, the other piece is the where we would hold the meetings. Yeah. We would like to hold them at the library.
So that would not be
again, to make sure that there's no facilities needs here. And they've already got it all set up. Your other question was about student enrollment and how many kids, and then also just wondering whether parents would object to having a mixed group of high school and middle school kids. Mm-hmm. So I'd like to address both. The how many, we don't know because we haven't done it yet. We're probably equipped to do, I would need to double check, but I'm guessing 10 to 15. 10 to 15. And I'm also, I think that parents will self-select out if they don't want their kids to be with high school kids. I think what we would need to do is just be really clear that this is a mixed adolescent group. And I like the idea, I'm not opposed to the idea of not having high school kids, but I like it because that age of 14 to 17, there's some really unique, good work that goes on in adolescence, again, as they're trying to figure out their place in society. And I like the multi-age component of that. As the 8th graders transition to high school, I think it would make for a nice community building, just a small piece of that transition. So that's just my response to that. So,
Thank you. I think the last thing I'll just state, and I think it's what I started with,
yeah.
is that the hesitancies that I was expressing at earlier meetings really had to do less with staff time and more with staff time on things that weren't really deeply connected with our strategic plan, because we'd spent so much time on the strategic plan. And I feel like you've answered that question now that you've clarified more what would be happening and why it's so deep, why it's connected to the plan.
Thank you.
Hi, Christy. I'm sorry if I missed it, but did you provide a recommendation for how this committee would be incorporated, so to speak? That is, would it be necessarily a board committee? And is there a reason it would need to be under the aegis of the board? I know that the idea of kind of an advisory committee was floated earlier. Is there something that you couldn't do if it wasn't under the board aegis?
So I think, so the quick answer is yes, we could. There's a group of parents that want to do this. We can offer it to kids. We just don't have as far a reach. And to me, that's goes against the equity work that we've been doing, trying to make sure that not just the kids who have parents who have time to do this have access to a program like it. So there's that piece of it. The other piece is, I think it will help us if we can go to the other boards and say this is a community event. And then maybe on a smaller scale, it's just good for kids to get up and present in front of a board. So those are just my initial thoughts. Is there more, are you thinking it's not necessary or okay.
Yeah, thank you. Such good information and good connection, so appreciate it. Yeah, I guess mine is a little further, maybe it's too far in the details, but I'm thinking about what you talked about with equity, which is awesome. I think there's definitely some climate equity, and I'll defer to Ms. Nash as well for her thoughts on it, but I do think that climate justice and environmental justice is certainly a connection to equity work. So, and then my other thought is, how do we recruit students, just as you mentioned, in a way that's equitable? And, my mind goes to how do we do that? That doesn't involve a lot of staff time, because we do have to go into classrooms to communicate this. You know what I mean? We got to do it. It's got to be out there somehow. So that's one piece that we don't have to answer tonight, just on my mind. And then the other piece is, I think there's last time we were talking about how do we not involve staff? At the same time, I'm sure there are staff who consider this their area of expertise and, things that they teach as well. And so how do we communicate it to them in a way that also doesn't assume that they would participate, but also doesn't assume that they wouldn't, and duplicates anything that they may have been thinking about doing or already are doing and may see as duplicative. So I just think we want to make sure that we're not stepping on any toes in that way as well. So those are just my two.
Yeah,
more
no, I
things to
love
think
that.
about.
Thank you. I don't know that I have answers for you, but thank you.
I'll just reiterate some of the conversations that you and I had earlier in the week. One of my biggest concerns is, as you mentioned, is snowballing and taking time away from staff and their ability to start implementing our strategic plan, right? Again, we spent countless hours with people in the community and developed our goals and our strategic plan to move the district in a certain direction. I just want to make sure we don't all of a sudden veer off course. So, to me, I still would need to know where our guardrails are gonna be, right? So we don't go off the path, straight line, whatever you wanna call it. So those are some of the questions I still have in my head, or where the clearly defined guardrails that we're gonna operate within, or this group will operate in. And while this might be a question for Chris on this issue, Chris Wolk. So if there's going to be high school kid volunteers, they're not our kids as far as the school district goes. Does that make them volunteers that then need to have to go through a background check as well?
If they're going to be overseen by another volunteer, so if we have an adult volunteer who's part of that group, who's overseeing the entire group, then they would be a body of the students. They wouldn't have to, but if they were in charge, they would be. They would need to be fingerprinted and background checked.
Okay. I was just thinking safety aspect-wise on that.
They would never be without one of the 5 of us adults.
Okay. And the other one that I talked about earlier, you just mentioned that somehow we have to get the word out inside the classrooms to all the students, one way or the other, either via email or whatever. One of the other concerns that I had is, and this is part of the guardrails that I'm talking about, concern I have is, they get the utility bills, they go through them, and now they want to do a building survey of, they want to physically walk a building and see where they can maybe make changes, to get suggestions and to make changes to save. And that would take up some time for, not only for them walking through the building, but also for some sort of staff to walk through them and explain every aspect of, this is a boiler, this is a air handling unit, and all that other stuff would all have to get explained. So I want to just make sure we have some clearly defined guardrails of what they're going to be able to, I guess, request, right? What other services are they going to request that may, kind of veer off from what the original intent is?
I think kids will be kids, and they'll probably request a whole bunch of things, and we'll be the adults and tell them yes when they can and no when they can't. I don't know how to else. I mean, we'll say your budget is 2 to 3 or whatever the background. The kids aren't going to see the background check, so I think we'll just say 2 to 3 hours, and you can spend it however you want. But once you get to 3 hours, you're done. And that's I'm not including the board presentation in that. I'm including staff time. So I think the guardrails are that it's 16 weeks, and they get 2 to 3 hours of staff time. And they get to show us what they can do with that. And they get access to a whole bunch of tools. So and then we help them identify that the purpose of this is for them to be good citizens, where they come and they say, so let's say they go to the village, because the village has a sustainability plan. So they look at the sustainability plan and they say, we love the tree canopy. And we understand that they did just approve $100,000 more for trees in our community. And they say, can we help you plant them? Or they say, maybe we can plant trees in our community or whatever. That's just an example. I'm not going to steer them to trees. But my point is that they're not coming to the board to tell the board what the board should do. And they're not coming to the board to tell the board to ask the staff to do something different. They will come and say, what is already going on? And we're going to be able to say, well, here's the facilities plan. And I don't have to go to Mr. Halpern for that because I already have it. And then I say, here's the plan that was just communicated to us. What do you think? And they're going to say, what's an indoor air quality assessment? And then we're going to say, well, funny you should ask. Let's go back to the lessons. So the guardrail, I think, is the very clear expectations of what the program is about and what it's not about. Beyond that, those are the guardrails, but then I think we give them some choices within that to say, you design your response based on what these guardrails are, but you can't go past them.
Okay.
I don't know if that's as specific as you want, but
I got. Anybody else have any other questions? Okay. So I guess how would the board like to look at proceeding with this or not proceeding with this? Typically, we need to bring it to some sort of a vote. It's up to you guys. I mean, we can just give consent, or we can say, wait till next year when the next cohort starts up. We could say, no, we're not interested, so I guess one way, and we can, if we still need to gather information, unfortunately, she's under a little bit of a time crunch as far as the end of the month. If it's something that we want more information from and more clarity on some of the subjects that we need to talk about it, continue to discuss about it before we make any decisions, then, we can ask to put it back on a different meeting. So looking for your feelings on which way you want to go with that.
So,
Can we include Dr. Glickman in that as well, please?
I will yield to Dr. Glickman and chime in afterwards then.
Are you asking if you have the support of the administration on moving forward with this program?
So that's a hard place to put you in. I'm sorry. Maybe that's not a good idea.
No, that's okay. You know what? I can be in that position because I can tell you that we can support this. I was hesitant prior to this evening's presentation for a lot of reasons. I think the reasons that we've discussed, but I feel much more confident now that I understand what the parameters of the program would be, what the benefits would be for the students, and how it's connected to the work that we've already planned to do. So for that reason, I can speak, I think, on behalf of the administrative team that based on the way you presented it this evening, we can support it.
Sorry to put you on the spot there.
No, that's okay. I would rather be put on the spot than not be asked, so it works out. It's fine.
Tamika?
So my thoughts are, I really think it's an awesome initiative, and I love that you connected the dots back to the strategic plan. One of the things that's percolating in my head is around like a feasibility analysis, right? Or some type of study, like how do we test and learn this, right? Because we still have unknowns in terms of interest, community partnerships, would science and math teachers be really excited, energized to support this, where there may be overlap? So I think it's amazing. I think it totally fits into where we're trying to go and grow as a district. I'm thinking, and this is kind of tethered to another conversation we've had as a board in terms of having like a junior board member, a student that represents that demographic, right, as part of the board. And perhaps, is this an assignment, if you will, or how this junior board member can get some skin in the game, right, and partner with the community engagement committee, and that kind of be a project that he or she, under your supervision, Dr. Mack, as the committee heads, works to bring life to it, right? And then once we flushed out, we've learned a little bit more, right? Because it's time sensitive. So once we've learned a little bit more, we have our sea legs. So we clearly can articulate time commitments. We clearly can convey who our community partners are willing, to be, because I know we're still a little bit unsure about that. Then we get into 2022, right? And now it becomes more of a crystallized program and process, right? But we've done it at a way where we've done something that we were already aiming for anyway, which is getting student representation, giving them an initiative under all the parameters that you've laid out, right? But it's without the need to kind of have a board committee, right? And you more so are serving as like an advisor to this junior, am I using the right word, junior board member? You know.
I think we know what you mean.
You
Like a
tracking
youth,
with me?
yeah.
So, you know, it's almost like killing two birds with one stone, right? We want that perspective. This could be a great way for this individual to get involved in the board, right? Through this initiative that links to the board, but it's not a board initiative, is more under the community engagement kind of committee work. And then we have an opportunity to learn a little bit more in terms of where overlap between curriculum might be, you know, teacher engagement, you know, any blind spots that we may not be accounting for. Give us a chance to then, you know, have that PR to go back to the other folks in the community to say, hey, you know, village board, look what we've done, and this is really working. So then we can kind of have that more comprehensive group of folks supporting and sponsoring this. I don't want to belabor the point. I support it, I like it, but I'm thinking that I'd like to see it more so in a smaller, scoped out a little bit differently, as opposed to us kind of supporting this bigger initiative. Start with identifying that junior representative that we think we need to have voice at the table, and then have this as a key initiative that he or she or them will be able to work on.
Okay, so move forward, but have the team be part of the community engagement committee as a board. So a committee of the community engagement committee, if that makes sense, as opposed to a board committee. Is that what you're?
Yes.
But everything else is the same.
Everything else is the same, just looking at it, tackling it from the standpoint that we're fitting a need that we've identified, that a need and also a value add to the board and also to the student community, right? So we're having that voice here, and this is something that they can kind of be handed as one of the key initiatives as a junior member of the board to be a part of.
I have to think about how to make that work because it's just the 5 months and it ends at that point. So if we're asking to do it for 2 years, that's a different ask. If we're asking to do it in a small way and then bring that to the board to identify a board youth member, I'm not sure how that, so I just have to think about it.
Yeah, okay.
But yeah.
So really trying to simplify it. I know that sounded like a lot, but really just trying to simplify it to say, let's start here with something that I think we were already pretty uniformed in bringing a student on to the board at some point in time, right? And then kind of align a key initiative like this that supports the strategic plan to that individual, right? Okay.
So I guess my question is, do we, for you, in your opinion, do we need to bring this back for another, to a board vote, or would you want to give a consent vote tonight?
I don't know that we need to bring it back to the board. Christie?
I'm personally fine to give consent tonight.
Yeah.
Yeah, just with, you know, the discussion of some of the open issues, knowing that Dr. Glickman supports it is super helpful, and yeah.
Christy, are you saying move forward, are you saying move forward as is or wait?
Yeah, I would say yes. I don't think we need to bring it to like another meeting and another board vote. I would just say I'd give consent tonight, knowing that there's just a couple issues that we need to iron out as we move forward.
Okay, thank you.
Jason?
Yeah, I'm supportive of this as a committee as stipulated, and I just don't see the need, I just don't, I hope it doesn't get into a situation where there's a huge timekeeping effort and then everyone can just, understand the agreements that are made about the time commitments. And live within that, given that, yeah, I'm supportive of it. It's important work, and I think it should move forward.
Okay. There you go.
Okay, so everyone knows I can't hear everything with the masks, but I think I'm going to apply for the cohort and we're good, right? Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Moving on to, this is where the little kids get Nancy in the back. Or did he leave? Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, all right, so the next is the seating of our new board member. I have a sheet somewhere that I'm supposed to swear in here with. Didn't lose it at least. So if you want to come up to the podium there.
I was just going to ask Abby if she was going to take pictures. Yeah.
Okay. And I'll just yell. So raise your right hand, please. This is the board member oath of conduct. I state your name.
I, Jessica Albert,
Do solemnly swear that I will faithfully discharge the duties
do solemnly swear that I will faithfully discharge the duties sure.
Of the office of member of the Board of Education
of the office of member of the Board of Education
of Community Consolidated School District 46
of Community Consolidated School District 46
in accordance with the Constitution of the United States,
in accordance with the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution of the State of Illinois,
the Constitution of the State of Illinois,
and the laws of the State of Illinois to the best of my ability.
and the laws of the State of Illinois to the best of my ability.
I further swear that
I further swear that
I shall respect taxpayer interests by serving as a faithful protector of the school district's assets.
I shall respect taxpayer interests by serving as a faithful protector of the school district's assets.
I shall encourage and respect the free expression of opinion by my fellow board members.
I shall encourage and respect the free expression of opinion by my fellow board members
And others who seek a hearing before the board,
and others who seek a hearing before the board,
while respecting the privacy of students and employees.
while respecting the privacy of students and employees.
I shall recognize that the board member has no legal authority
I shall recognize that a board member has no legal authority
as an individual, that decisions can be made only by a majority of vote at a public board meeting.
as an individual, and that decisions can be made only by a majority vote at a public board meeting.
I shall abide by majority decisions of the board
And I shall abide by majority decisions of the board
while retaining the right to seek charges or changes in such decisions through ethical and constructive channels.
while retaining the right to seek changes in such decisions through ethical and constructive channels.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we have a spot up here for you.
Okay.
Okay. Next on the agenda is the Durham contract amendment that is being proposed.
Okay, since the start of the school year, the district has experienced the driver shortage that's impacted the delivery of transportation to our students. The administration, myself, and Grays Lake High School District 127, my counterpart, Abe Singh, the Associate Superintendent, have been working collaboratively with Durham Transportation's executive leadership to develop strategies to locally maximize our staffing levels. The potential actions are in the attached board packet, and we have with us this evening Vice President of Operations Rick Klaus and General Manager Kevin Middleditch, who will be able to take any questions from you about the recommendations we collaboratively came up with District 127.
So, President Weidman, members of the board, and Dr. Glickman, I'm Rick Klaus. I'm the Vice President of Operations with Durham and our parent company, National Express. My responsibilities are for operations in about 50 locations in the Midwest here. Kevin Middleditch is the general manager who really works tirelessly every day to get your students to school safely and on time. That's what we do. And we want to thank you for the partnership that we've had. We've been here over 10 years, and that really culminated, in my mind, during COVID with all the meal runs that we did and collaborated on with many of you, to bring meals to the community. And that was so meaningful for our employees to be part of the community in that fashion. So that's been great. But really, COVID has really put a hurt on us and our industry around the country. I know you hear about this in lots of industries and supply chain and all that, but with school bus drivers, a recent survey indicated that more than half of the districts around the country have stated that their school bus shortages are desperate and severe. 77% in the Midwest have had to change their operations, their routing structure and merge routes and things, and change the trip schedules because of a lack of drivers. And what's happened here in the fall is we've got two traditional places we draw drivers, right? Early retirees, if there's anyone who's about to retire that might want to drive a bus.
Or we could do it together.
So I couldn't help myself. And then moms, right? We have a great child ride-along program, and being on the school schedule is great for moms. And those populations have really dwindled for us. Dr. Glickman mentioned, hopefully the shots for the vaccines for 5 to 11-year-olds are coming soon. We're really hoping for that because there's a lot of reluctance, in our elderly driver pool to, be in a confined space of a bus, with children that are just, they don't have a vaccine available to them. So while we've lost more drivers, over the summer and through the spring than we normally do, we might lose 15% of the drivers in a summer. But we've always been able to backfill them. And that's what changed dramatically here over the last few months, is that we lost probably twice that number of normal drivers, and there weren't people there to apply, and there are a host of reasons for that. The federal unemployment subsidies, the reluctance because of vaccination status, the Delta variant, all those things really made our job a lot harder. And is it getting a little bit better? Yes. We're definitely seeing an uptick in a little bit in applications, but more than that, it's people showing up for the process to become a bus driver and coming to our training and getting their commercial driver's license. Last month, we've seen a little bit uptick, but we've also seen the competition heat up. And that's really what, we've collaborated very strategically with the administrators here at District 46 and District 127, as Chris said, to try to work together on some solutions to address the driver shortages and have more drivers to be able to be on time, for our children. And that's what we're really here to talk about and answer your questions. I mean, a lot of things around us have changed with competition. Other school districts are upping the ante. There's sign-on bonuses out there. There's wages going up, and we're asking for your help because it's a crisis we've never seen. This is in our industry. We've had people been here 30, 40 years. They've never seen anything like it. So that's what we've been talking to the districts about, and we're happy to answer any questions that you might have.
And
My name is Jason LaCroix. I have a question for you. The cost that's quoted in the option is $53,000 over a 3-month period. Can I look at that as a one-time cost or a recurring cost?
Well, if we have a couple components that add up to that dollar amount, and it includes a sign-on bonus, and if we're going to give a sign-on bonus to new people, what about all those people that have stuck with us and worked twice as hard, right? We have to do something for them. So there's a component of that for attendance and retention bonuses, okay? There's also a component to pay the drivers for their time getting tested weekly or to have the vaccine. If we get the number of drivers that we're looking for here in this amendment through the sign-on bonus, then it will end, right? And we will have spent the money, and in 3 months we'll be done, and it won't continue. If we don't get the results we want, we won't have spent all that money, all that $53,000, right, on the sign-on bonuses, and we would have to revisit with the board whether we would extend it or not. And I think a lot can happen over the next 3 months that can, you know, bring a little bit more focus to our challenges and where we're at and overcoming them. So the beauty of what we've done is that it, you know, if we throw money at it with wages or benefits and those kind of things, those are forever, right? And what we've done here is we've done some things that are quite temporary, that will be meaningful in the marketplace and to our people, but then it ends. And if things improve, it won't be recurring. So that's the idea. We have tried around the country some other things where we've raised wages dramatically. And we're not here suggesting that because in a lot of places that just hasn't solved the problem. And we don't want to advocate for that right now because that's a permanent ongoing cost. So these things are one time, and then we revisit and kind of see where we are in a few months.
Have you structured the sign-on bonuses to be payable only after a certain period of time so that you don't have someone taking advantage of that and not solving the problem?
Right. So for this 3-month period, they would, the bonuses we propose are $2,500 if a person already possesses a commercial driver's license, $1,000 if they don't. In either case, they would be paid in equal installments over 5 months once they actually start a route for the district. So spread over 5 months. What we do, you know, at other times of the year, we would spread them out, you know, come back after spring break or come finish the school year or come back next school year. So if we're in the same position where we need to do this in the spring, it would be spread out differently. But right now, the plan is a 5-month program once they start driving your students.
And then my last question for you is, I'd say the hallmark of a good partnership is that both parties would, you know, share equally in the success and also sacrifice equally in the hard times. The fact that you're in front of us tonight, does that mean that you feel you're at the end of what you can give, and without this from the district, the contract is not profitable for you, and without, are you sharing in the sacrifices? My question distilled.
No, it's a very good question, very fair question. You know, last year we didn't make any money, right? No profit, we lost money. This year we might make a little bit of money. It's hard to say. I mean, as a corporation, right, we're publicly traded. You know, we just announced our third quarter earnings. We're at about the third quarter we were at 83% of pre-COVID revenues. The second quarter we were at like 70% So, yeah, we're not in a situation where it's profitable right now, but that's a COVID-related thing, right? That doesn't taint our view of the partnership and the 10 years we've been here, right? That is what it is, right? So what we've done all kinds of things in terms of our recruiting budget and, you know, putting signs out and hiring recruiters, and all we're asking here is, you know, to fund these couple things, right, on a dollar-for-dollar basis. We'll pay the payroll taxes and all that kind of stuff that goes, you know, along with payroll. But that's where we are.
Are you publicly traded under a parent company name?
Yeah, it's National Express. It's traded on the London Stock Exchange.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
How many people are you short currently for our contract?
Currently, for District 46, we're short 8 bus drivers, and that includes both regular education, pre-kindergarten, and special education routes.
Okay, and what has been the impact of those 8 shorted bus drivers?
Well,
I know in the beginning we had some trouble with routes and stuff and that. Have we adjusted to the point where our delivery times and pickup times are back to closer to normal?
We're improving, and they are closer to normal. What we're experiencing, and there's been a lot of communication between myself and Mr. Wabin on a daily basis, you know, how we can continue to improve, because that's always our goal. We still have open routes, and the biggest impact now, we see children being on the buses longer and the buses being more crowded. So obviously, those are 2 conditions that we want to change as quickly as possible. We're also experiencing driver burnout, for lack of a better term, which also is a condition that we want to change as quickly as possible, so we don't find ourselves even shorter on labor.
Okay, with the potential for the vaccine coming in and kids potentially getting vaccinated by pretty much the end of the year, right, to be considered by Christmas, if everything goes right, they should all be considered fully vaccinated. Does the parameters change to what we can put on a bus after the first of the year to where the buses?
No, sorry, no,
Okay.
because there are no current COVID parameters anyway on the buses. We are back to full capacity to the extent possible based on the routes.
Okay,
So it's not like last year when we were at 50
Right.
students on a bus.
that's where I was going.
Yeah, no.
Okay. Kristen?
So I was reading an article in one of the publications we get for being on the school board, and it identified the three reasons. I don't know if you agree with these or not, but for bus driver shortages, one is safety with the vaccines and COVID. The second was pay. And then the third was respect. So my question is around respect, that many drivers and other employees in other industries too feel a lack of respect, and that impacts employee retention. So I'm wondering if there have been any initiatives that you have done, and then if you could recommend anything we might be able to do to increase the respect that our bus drivers feel so that we can retain them.
We give our drivers, you know, lunches and breakfasts on a regular basis just to show how much we do respect them and care for them and appreciate them being here. Rick recently had a town hall meeting with our drivers where management was not allowed to attend, so he could get their feedback and also the ways they felt that we could improve our operation. And we're implementing those suggestions now. It's going to take a little time, but we're in the process of implementing those suggestions now. One thing that I think that the district has been very supportive. You know, I know Chris has been out several times to where our drivers are picking up. The principals are out talking to the drivers, getting their feedback. And I think that is the biggest key, is the communication between the drivers, management, and ourselves and District 46, just so the drivers do feel that respect. You know, that there are situations sometimes which we've been addressing with the schools on an individual basis, you know, about bus conduct, and I think we're starting to see some improvement on that. But that would probably be the one key thing that the drivers could probably get the most support from the district with, is just supporting them as if they have to do bus conduct on the buses with the students. Again, tremendous improvement, you know, as we were in the beginning of the year as to where we are now, but we'd just like to see that continue and just keep the communication open.
Great, thank you. So is there PD and by PD, I mean professional development with your managers so that they're managing well? The truism, people don't leave jobs, they leave managers. Is that salient at all or no?
Yes, you know, I came in from another company last year, and that's something that I've always been passionate about, is the employee development. You know, COVID's put a little crimp in that and slowed up the progression of several people, but we lost probably our best router in the entire country because she was promoted to another service center. So the progression is there for the employees, you know, for the management staff. There is a program called Durham Bench? Build a Bench, where, you know, the managers can go to just go and get a well-rounded education on what's expected of them as they go forward in the company. I know they have to come up with their own ideas and make their presentations as they progress through the program.
Yeah, we've put 2 people at this location through our Build a Bench program, which is like a capstone project you might have, you know, with a advanced degree or a college degree, right, where we give them a challenge and they go through about a 6-month process and then present to the senior management of the company. We've done, you know, 1 person each year out of this location for that, and that's a big one for us.
Great, thank you.
Just had 2 questions. My name is Tamika Nash. Thank you so much for being here tonight. The first question is your organization eligible for federal COVID relief dollars to aid in creating these more sustainable wages that you referred to, in terms of, hey, if we continue to raise the hourly rate by so much, and obviously the benefits and things that tackle into that, are you eligible for any relief dollars?
We are eligible for CERTS dollars, which we are just now receiving. Those dollars are being used for raises that we've done. We did raises this summer. We just gave all the staff a raise in the maintenance shop and in the office. And there are strings attached with the CERTS money that we can't lay anybody off or furlough anyone. So that we've been working on lobbying, you know, on a national level and a state level to receive, and we're trying to figure out what all, you know, we can do with that.
Okay. And then my next and last question is, you indicated that this increase that is being sought, you know, it would help to, and this might be my words, not yours, but not so much fix the problem, but kind of get us closer to, I guess, closing the gap. So I guess, where do you feel like we'll be positioned on the other side of this? Like, how close will this 53,000 plus get us to closing the gap on fixing the problem, provided everything else stays equal and we don't have any more issues and the kids get vaccinated and all that?
Yeah, I mean, as you allude to, there are a lot of variables, right? Everything else being equal, right? If we're able to retain the people we have and we don't get any more, you know, I'll say hits, you know, like COVID it's the hits that keep coming, right? There's a new variant that comes, that kind of thing. And the testing requirement that I know you all are dealing with as well, that's had an impact on us because we were about 70% vaccinated in Illinois, and that's gone up slightly with that. So, you know, it's definitely going to help inch us up. I can't say that it's going to fix, you know, the problem. It would be great if we got 8 drivers through this, and Well, we'll lose a couple between now and 3 months as well, just through normal attrition. But with the shots happening and the bonuses, we'll be calling all the former employees, those 30 or 40 people that just decided not to do it anymore last year. Could really help if some of them want to come back, and that's why the bonus and the vaccines for the 5 to 11-year-olds can make a huge difference for us.
Okay, thank you.
Not that this would, tell me if this is really, really a dumb idea, but would our vaccination rate among students be a selling point for those folks?
I do think that if we had the data that showed that District 46 vaccination rates were higher than others, we would sell that very hard, and that would be a very attractive thing for our drivers, yes.
Okay, thank you.
I do have one more question, only because it's not clear to me how the numbers work in this part. In the memo that we get from you, it says increased pay for field activity and athletic trips up to a route pay of $22 an hour, which is what you're proposing, increase in your hourly salary for your employee, right? It said it would increase the trip rate from $39.06 an hour all the way up to $45 an hour. So I want to know how $1 an hour raise translates into almost $6 in an increase in our hourly rate for the trip.
Right. The dollar was for the home to school rate. The roughly $6, that is an increase we're giving the drivers to do the trips, okay? We've had traditionally here a much lower rate for field athletic and activity trips than their $21 home to school rate. So since people are covering double routes and they're working a lot of hours, they're tired. So to do the extra trips, we're having some difficulty getting people to want to do that for $6 less than their route rate. So what that is, it's a dollar for dollar increase in the driver pay for trips, because it's a lot lower than that $21. So those are two different increases we're talking about, the $1 and the roughly $6.
So when they do an activity or a trip, you pay them $39 an hour currently?
No.
That's
No.
why I'm trying to figure out how it translates in.
They're paid, Kevin, help me.
$15.88 an hour.
Okay.
And we
For-
would
for a
raise
field
that
trip.
to 21 through this amendment. So they're paid $21 an hour to drive home to school routes.
Okay.
And $15.88 an hour for a trip. So one of the things they asked about, right, in our town hall was, was that inequity, and if they were able to get the $21 for the trips, we'd have a lot easier time fulfilling them.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else have any other questions?
Just one last question, just as a result of your question, Mr. Wheatman, and the response. So I know the trip rate is being adjusted. It sounds like the staff has expressed being tired, like I am right now. I just want to make sure with the doubling or potentially tripling of routes, are we still within DDOT?
DOT, yeah, the
The DOT
hours of
rate.
service
Yes.
regulations, yes, we're well under that.
Okay, thank you.
And that's something we track every driver every day.
Thank you.
Anybody else have any other questions? No? Okay. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Okay, so we are up to topics for future agenda items. I think next meeting is pretty big, isn't it?
I know, no, actually, the one after that. Yeah, so November 3rd, we have the district goals update that we talked about earlier for technology, finance, and facilities. We'll come back with that last one, IASB resolution. I believe that we'll be bringing forth an updated superintendent contract, just updated with my new goals, because I think that they have to be amended. And we'll bring back the Durham contract amendment as a board vote. And that's what I have for the next meeting. I can share that the November 17th meeting is a heavier meeting. It's a very finance and facilities heavy meeting. So it'll start with Finance Committee, which I believe, am I right, Chris, that meeting is a, what does this mean?
Starts at 4:30.
Starts at 4:30? Okay. When I saw the four-hour Finance Committee meeting, wow! Starts at 4:30, okay. We'll have an update on our long-range facilities plan at the next meeting. At that meeting, there'll also be a levy hearing and an action item that'll be the audit results. Is that correct? Yeah. And I think we might also be bringing closed session minutes at that meeting as well. That'll be quick. So that's what I have.
Anybody else need anything added into that?
I'm thinking of maybe a standing agenda item where we have a minute to appreciate Paul Lewis from now until June 30th.
I love that
Cake
idea.
every 2 weeks?
Cake every 2 weeks. No, in all seriousness, Paul, I want to just add my thank you to you for all you've done for the district. And I know we'll have an opportunity for a more fulsome embarrassment of you later, but thank you.
Okay. We will have, well, I'm sorry, do we have any public comments? No, seeing none. Then we are up to needing to go into closed session. So I need a motion to go into closed session.
So moved.
Second.
LaCroy,
Aye.
Nash,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Albert. Aye. Weedman,
Aye.
Braden.
Aye.
And we're not expecting any action coming out of this, right? So after we're done with the closed session, we'll be just coming out to adjourn the meeting in public. We don't expect any action items to come out of it. So thank you very much, and we'll see you in a couple weeks.